What's up, peeps? In today's video, I'm taking part in the Save the Planet collab. This one's hosted by Marissa at Miss Flips. I'm finishing off brush drying station that I started during last week's Thrift Flips video. Plus, I'm gonna add faux tumbled tile to my garage sink backsplash. I'm using as many eco-conscious materials and solutions as I can to get two amazing finishes. So if you like the planet or makeovers like this, then stick around and let's get started. I started this project by measuring the wall behind my sink where I want to add the tile. Actually, wait a minute. Let's back up for a second. When the opportunity to take part in this collab came up, I knew my first stop would be the thrift store. Thrifting is inherently eco-friendly because it's giving new life to an already existing item. And this shelf is actually something I need, so that seemed more planet-friendly than creating something new. When I got home, I inspected the wall behind the sink. Because I paint for a living, the wall behind my sink gets a lot of splatter. And I wanted a way to mask that without buying anything newly manufactured, like tile. One old sample board plus an almost dried out bucket of joint compound that I wanted to use up instead of throw away, by the way, later, and my project was set. I used my level with the 45-degree bubble and I started laying out my tile lines. I used a rough 4-inch square measurement, but because tumbled tile is sometimes hand-thrown, I wasn't too concerned with perfection on the size. As long as I kept that 45-degree angle, I knew it would turn out feeling pretty organic. Between the measuring tape and the level, I made quick work of adding the lines to the wall. That is, up until the garage door opener, where I called in the man who has removed this before. Hello, Mr. CC DIY. Sorry for the dimness. But we gotta turn off the garage door in order to pry things. If that's how you do it, please don't break it. Oh my. I mean, there has to be a way to get into the screw. Oh, you got it. This like has to be it. Yes.
It is.
Wait, that's the screw to get. Oh yeah. Yeah. All right, cool.
Which is good, because now I can maybe do this better than it was before.
Are you going to put it in the same place, though?
I'm going to put it wherever you tell me to put it.
I mean, you can put it back over, once I get the faux done in here, you could put it right back where it is right now if you want. I'll leave that hole open and available, but I'm going to need it just out of my way for doing that. Okay. And I think you can see where the border is of where I'm doing that.
Starting to get a feel for that.
Yeah.
It's going to look good.
Thanks. I can't wait to do it. Yay, right. She's free.
She's free.
So now I can get the last of those level lines drawn in. And I'm done for the day.
Sweet.
Back in the air-conditioned house, I got back to the brush drying station. That seems right. Okay. Let's try and not have that happen again. Let's try that again. I'm using chalk paint by FAUX Art in the color Nautical as my base paint. Chalk paint is one of the more environmentally safe options because it's non-toxic, low or no VOC, low or no odor, and water-based. Plus, I had this paint on hand. In fact, I'm not using anything new to complete either of these projects for materials. I'm making use of paints and glazes left over from other projects. I rinsed off the stencil and lined it up for the next area. Now, normally I'd make sure the stencil goes all the way into the corners and edges, but I'm kind of going for a heavily distressed, very worn look on this piece, so it just doesn't need to be perfect. I love this stencil. It has kind of an ocean wave vibe, so I knew it would be great for a shelf over by the sink. And speaking of, then I got started on the faux tiles. I'm using a larger size Japan scraper to apply a thin coat of the joint compound, but I'm only placing within the diamond shape area inside the pencil lines. This doesn't have to be perfect, and in fact, I want it to be somewhat broken, but with a smooth surface, and hopefully that makes sense. I dragged the product across the surface using a skip trowel technique, leaving some depressions but nothing raised. These first two took me about 9 minutes to complete, and I had 48 of them to do, so I got moving. I filled in every other area to start, that way I didn't disrupt the wet compound in the square next to it. So I should probably explain my decision here. Tile, especially tumble tile, is a natural material, so the environmental impact isn't particularly bad. But the production, installation, and finishing of the tile will use significantly more water than just about any other type of DIY project. In this case, I'm getting the exact same look and feel as real tile, but with minimal water use. Here in the desert, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and water conservation is always one of my top priorities. Plus, like I said before, this compound was on the way to drying out, and I didn't have any other need for compound right now. Doing this let me use up 100% of the mud in this bucket. Plus, I'm gonna clean and then save the bucket and lid for future mixing needs. I kept going until I reached a tricky spot. So for these, I don't have enough room to flick off with the larger Japan scraper that fits into all of the other ones. So I just grab my tinier Japan scraper, and this way I can literally just flick off. It's much, much smaller, so it's easier to kind of like manipulate and just come across this line. You've seen me scrape back on the lines, and that's pretty much what I'll do, but I definitely want to get like a nice thick edge there, so let's do that now. I kept going over the surface, just scraping back, adding, smoothing, and manipulating the compound until all straight lines were removed and I was happy with the texture and shape. The next day, I started by filling in some of the smaller tiles around the edge. I filled in and then scraped back from the pencil lines with the edge of the Japan scraper, and I also scraped from the edge of the tape. That way the compound doesn't crack or flake off when I pull the tape. I finished up and pulled the tape right away. Then I left everything to dry overnight. Back inside, the shelf stenciling had dried, so I started distressing. First, I wanted to remove any large bumps or chunks, so I grabbed a fine grit rad pad and I ran it across the entire piece. But I wanted this to look really weathered. Because the compound and paint is a water-soluble mix, I was able to wet sand some larger areas. I did this totally randomly and all over, and I used a wet rag. But I paid the most attention to the back where it would be seen the most. Then I wrapped things up for the day. The next morning, I used a medium rad pad across the tiles just to smooth out any obvious raised areas or chunks. And these sponges are flexible, so I could bend it to get into the grout lines. That really helped to open up those spaces and further define the tiles. I wiped down the dust and let everything dry. Then it was time to prime. I used water-based restoration kills for this. I had it on hand, and it's really good on raw compound to help seal it. So I turned back to the shelf and it was time to get grungy. For all the weathering and further distressing that I'm doing, I'm using more folk art chalk paint. Then with some chip brushes, I added layers of different colors just until I was happy with the final look. I wasn't going for anything specific, just a vibe. Things dried after a couple hours and I added 1 coat of folk art wax to finish it off. Wax is a great eco choice of top coat because it's less chemically based than something like a poly. Also, wax performs awesome over chalk paint, and in my case, it'll help repel water. I did 1 coat and let it dry about 2 hours before I buffed it out. I didn't worry about covering the hook holes while I was painting and stenciling. Using an awl, I just punched out any excess product after everything dried. The next morning, I got back to the tile. I added 1 coat of Faux Effects Set Coat in white and I let that dry for about an hour. Set Coat is water-based and it's a highly pigmented bonding paint. To finish off the shelf and brush drying station, I reattached the hook hardware. Then all I had left was to finish the tile, starting with my mid-tone glaze. I custom mixed these colors using Modern Masters Platinum Glaze, Folk Art Chalk Paint, and a small touch of latex paint in 2 different colors. I applied the darkest color with a damp foam brush over everything. Then I pounced, stippled, and swirled the lighter 2 colors over the darker color using a damp sea sponge. I added and removed, trying to avoid obvious lines or patterns, looking for a mottled glaze appearance. With an artist brush and the darkest glaze color, I added depth back to the grout lines. Using a damp sea sponge, I removed any excess from the surface. I pulled the tape and tossed it. Side note, this was my only waste of the entire job. Woohoo! And I let the glaze dry overnight. The tile was feeling a bit flat to me and I still had some paint left, so I just grabbed a 3-inch foam roller and I added a light, almost dry roll of the lighter paint over the surface. And for the areas around the sink where I couldn't get the roller, I used a foam brush. But doing that took some depth away from the grout lines again, so I had to add some back. By this point, it was pretty toasty in my garage, so I worked with the door open and a cold cloth on the back of my neck. Phoenix is no joke, peeps. Another side note, when I'm just mixing a small bit of glaze like this, I like to use lidded plastic containers that I wash out and save from when we've bought our groceries. With everything dry in the morning, I added the first of 3 coats of Modern Masters Dead Flat Burnish. This is one of my favorite top coats because it's water-based, it's low VOC, and it's low odor, plus it's really tough and will hold up great to scrubbing once it fully cures out in about a month. I did all the coats over 2 days, waiting about 4 hours between the first and second coat, then overnight for the third. And with that done, I only had 2 things left to do: touch up the wall paint and install my grungy brush drying station. Let me take a second to thank Marissa at Miss Flips for hosting this awesome collab. I'm a gal who likes to keep an eye on the planet wherever I can, and doing this was so much fun. Check out the entire playlist and the link to Marissa's channel down in the description. And don't forget to subscribe over here if you haven't already for more furniture refinishing, thrift flips, and faux finishing. I'll be back on my usual Saturday upload this weekend with a super fun upcycled art piece that you won't want to miss. But that's it for this one. Thanks so much for watching. Stick around for those beauty shots. Later, peeps!
Just so we have a garage door opener. Hi.
Hi. The things you gotta do for good shots.
It's true. Okay.
Can I have my readers back now?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, it's go time. Okay. And as per usual, Matt is in the shower. So I'm gonna use a clean rag. I'm just gonna, this will be the cleanest thing ever because I'm just gonna use filtered water on this and then just wipe it down.